All right, so I've read a lot of messed up stuff, horror, disturbing books, some extreme horror, and then the border between all of those. Um, these aren't all necessarily horror books that I'm going to present to you. I have 8 here and 2 that aren't here because they were so messed up that I must have gotten rid of them. I like never wanted to see them again. And I don't know if you've had that experience where like you were just like, okay, I don't want to even see the cover of this book anymore. I read the whole thing, I put it down, and I was disgusted, and it was just like, this book ruined me for a while. The first book I'd like to honorably mention that I don't have is called Cows. It's called Cows. And the author is Matthew Stocko, Stokoe. And Cows is just like extreme horror, and there's more going on like in the story. It's about a guy working at like a slaughterhouse, and he's like living at home with this horrible mother who's just like, it's vulgar. There's a lot of like crazy abuse in that, and like eating things that shouldn't be eaten, and just all kinds of things that you don't even want. I don't think you could think about them if you tried. So that guy who wrote that book, I have another book I'm going to read from him called High Life. I opened it to a random page and read it, and it was a very, very fucked up scene. So I'm definitely in question of what's going on with that author. He's disturbed, but he's actually really good at making stuff that punches you in the face and doesn't stop punching you in the face until you're nauseous. So before I even start this list, that's book number 1, honorable mention. Cows is probably the most upsetting thing that I've had to deal with thus far in my book reading. I had to really push through that one because it was very upsetting and disturbing and visual and just like creative and strange. One of the cows talks to him in the book. It's just cracked out and just, that's not even anything compared to. Anyway, the other book that I'm missing is based on a true story, and it was Jack Ketchum's first book called The Girl Next Door. It was about how a town, small town, kind of captures this girl, this little girl. Basically, they all torture this young girl, and I don't want to give it away. It's based on a true story, though, and the way Jack Ketchum writes beautifully puts this story together, and it's believable, and you could see how this could happen, and the kids partake, like the neighborhood kids all partake in the torture of this little girl. And it's like heartbreaking, soul crushing, demoralizing, horrible book. But if you want something that's going to hit you really hard and you need something like to sink your teeth into like that, my curiosity got the best of me, and I went down the disturbing books rabbit hole. I think I'm spiraling towards that again because I just tried to read this horror book, ghost story that everyone hyped up. Keep hearing great stuff about it. About 100 pages in, and I can't stand it. I have like so far DNF'd it. So, Ghost Story by Peter Straub sitting over there. Um, yeah, I'm getting back into the hardcore stuff, like the messed up stuff. Anyway, let's start the list. Sorry for the preamble, but it was necessary. Those books I don't have because I just straight up got rid of them. They were just so messed up. But if you want to be destroyed too, go ahead and pick one of those up. Anyway, this one's actually a work of art. The Devil Crept In by Anya Alborn. Now, Anya Alborn actually made this list. 3 books on this list are from her. I've read probably 5 or 6 books of hers, not too sure. I don't keep score too much, but The Devil Crept In, this is a work of art. I really enjoyed this book. Is like a small town surrounded by like forest, and all the animals are going missing. The kids are like going missing. Something's going on in the woods. All the kids are like communicating, and nobody's listening to what the kids are saying. You got this like main character who's like a little one of the younger kids, and he's like, on the spectrum a little bit, and people don't believe him, and he's actually telling the truth a lot of the time in this book. And you got the parents, the abusive stepdad, you have the mom who's trying to keep it together and make sense of everything, and like kids getting injured and stuff, and like just all kinds of messed up stories, and then something lurking about. And it makes you kind of think twice when you look towards the forest, or you're sitting in a cabin and you remember this book when you read it. It's not like extreme horror at all. It has a lot of disturbing elements, and it has some things that are like, it's believable. It's very realistic, even though that there's some other stuff going on, as Anya Alborn always does. She does a really great job just leading you along and keeping you engaged, and just keeping you like locked in with the goings on of this book. It's a little bit nihilistic. Very enjoy Anya Alborn a lot. So she's an excellent author who you should check out. I'll show you another book from her right away. Actually, this one though stuck with me for a while. I was like impressed with how good this was compared to like her other stuff, which is a little bit more straightforward and not so in depth and crazy. Like this is a very straightforward story. Seed, and it's shorter, which makes it like pretty palatable for most readers. Nice short book, gets to the point, gets it done. She's a soul crusher, Anya Alborn. All of her books are straightforward, just beat the crap out of you. And if she has twists in them and stuff, she does put twists in her books and things that like you don't see coming, and then bam, you're gonna be thrown for a loop. Well, she pulls no punches in Seed. Seed's a story about this guy Jack. Something happens to him when he's a little kid, and he goes on the run for like the rest of his life. And he thinks that he got away with whatever happened. He got away from that thing, that whatever it was that happened to him when he was younger. And then he ends up kind of coming to reality that no, this thing's lurking. There's something just on the fringes of his periphery that is kind of like suffocating in at him, like a haunting almost. Something following him, and you just have brutality, escalating, horror elements, slow burn elements. You have like outright disturbing stuff, psychosis kind of things, like it with the family. And he's got two daughters, and Anya Alborn's gonna break your heart. This is a heavy read. It's not too soul shattering, but yes, this is dark. This is a dark horror book with a lot of fear in it, some violence, some scary parts, and very entertaining though. It's about, let's see how long it is, 230 pages ish. You could definitely get into this. I enjoyed this all the way through. I like how it ended up feeling when I was done with that. She just straightforward gives you a story. This one is a little bit different. The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks. This one could be hailed as a masterpiece. It's a very short book. It's in a bit of a different kind of prose, first person. It's about this little kid. I think he's like 16 years old, and he's telling you the story about his first, second, and third murders that he commits on this little weird island that he lives on, and how his brother's like coming home from prison, and he's surrounded by like all these like violent people who are like in control. There's like a power struggle for control. He's got this weird thing with mathematics and measuring everything in the house, and just, it's a very interesting book. It's kind of a masterpiece. I think if it wasn't so messed up, they would probably have made us read something like this in high school. You know, how they pick up those like crazy books and make you read them. But yeah, some dark stuff goes down in here. It's about a young kid who's like really just mentally trying to like make up all this imagination that he dwells in, and everything is just so creative and disturbing. This is a strange book, but Wasp Factory is really a short, quick read, and it did make me think a couple times, and I was just like, what the hell? So, one of the mini stories in here is he just kills a little girl just on a whim. So do what you will with that. The Wasp Factory, a lot of disturbing book lists have it. I would warn you though, it's not like the same. It kind of stands out with the writing, the way it works. It's a little bit of like an unreliable narrator, or it's just something you have to deal with, like this kid's imagination as he's explaining things to you, and you have to see like what he's saying through his imagination, trying to interpret like some of the things he's making up, and see where they're coming from, because it tells you a lot about the psychology behind even like a coming of age story almost, but just like the most messed up one you could think of. Really interesting one, okay? A lot of meaning in that book. I think a lot more commentary on growing up and coming of age story kind of stuff, but don't get it twisted. It's a weird one. It's disturbing, you know, abuse psychologically, just all kinds of stuff, physical stuff. Weird. That's a weird island they live on. Anyway, talked about this before. American Psycho, no real plot. It's commentary on like materialism, I think, or culture, or the lack of it, or fulfillment, whatever. You could go into this knowing whatever. It's a work of art. It's a masterpiece. It's hilarious to me. This book makes me laugh. I don't really know if I should be laughing because it's got some horrible stuff in it. But my biggest suggestion to people is just skip the chapters where he's giving like discography reviews if you don't care about him. But if you do like those discographies, he does some pretty epic, like deep reviews of like Whitney Houston's discography, Phil Collins' discography, just randomly interspersed in here. And he goes rambling about like materialistic shit all the time. This is a crazy, crazy read. The characters don't matter. The names of who's who don't matter. Patrick Bateman is the main character. He's just going through like day to day, trying to just find meaning in his like, he's trying to find satisfaction or some kind of fulfillment from this life that he has. He's like an aristocrat. He's like got all this money. He's in Manhattan. It's like I think late 1980s, early 90s, and it's just this crazy story. I mean, you could watch the movie and get like the gist of it, but this is way, way more graphic and crazy, and there's just scenes that could never go into a movie in here. So, yeah, when I read it, I think of Christian Bale acting as Bateman. It's the only way I could ever see him now. So when I read this book, I've read this book twice and then gone back in and read like sections randomly, just because really after you read it once, you could go back in here, grab any page and just start reading from that page. It doesn't matter, okay? You could just read this book you don't have to have it in any kind of order. There is a little bit of like a plot sort of, and it entertains me the way like everyone's trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and just like nobody knows who's who, and nobody gives a shit about anyone, and nobody's listening to anyone talk, and it's so relatable, but it's like also absurd. So anyway, Bret Easton Ellis, very interesting cat, very interesting author. I love this one. This was one of my favorite books ever. Let's go to something a little bit more straightforward. Tender is the Flesh. I've already talked about this. I think I'm going to continue to bring this one up because it's super dark, like dystopia, future. People can't eat meat anymore because the meat is all infected with this virus and you'll die if you eat it. So naturally, the world, the humans, we kind of self-organize around that, and we make our own meat, our own new meat industry with human meat. And we have slaughterhouses, and in one of those slaughterhouses in the human meat industry works our main character. And it's kind of his story and his goings about and his interactions, and you'll be immersed into this world. It's bleak, it's dark, it's upsetting, it's very, very upsetting. This one, it will bother you. Yes, it will bother you for sure. In a lot of ways. Vulgar things like think of something and it's in there's images that never left my head from this book. There's like things that I still think about when I'm going about my business. I read this like 4 or 5 years ago, right? And I'm going about my business, and if I think of this book, I'm thinking of those scenes. Okay, there's a couple scenes in here that are just like upsetting, and the main character, he's interesting enough for me to want to finish this book and his journey through this whole thing. And there's a lot going on commentary wise. There's a lot of themes going on. There's a lot of like what the author's trying to say about about certain things that are happening in the world now, and whatever. That's all underneath everything, but the story, like base face value, is very messed up. Okay, it's got to be on everyone's like top 10 disturbing books without being completely extreme horror. Like it's not like horror just for the sake of horror. There's actually a pretty cohesive plot story and like character development, and then a nice ending. I like the way I like the way this ended, but you might not. Anyway, Tender is the Flesh. It's a short book. It's worth looking into because if you're looking to be like straight to the point, highly suggest this one. It's upsetting. All right. This book, when I was done, I couldn't read like after I read this. This is Brother by Anya Alborn. She's back on the list again. This is the last one I promised from her on this list. So I gave you 3 from her already. This is the one that I think you should start with from her, because this just totally screwed me up, man. Like, I had to just put it down at when I was done with, and I just like I was just beside myself for a while. It wasn't the ending that did it. It was just the goings on of this book. Everything. Absolutely fucked me up. Absolutely, Brother messed me up. It's about this kid, Michael Morrow. He's like 19. Yeah, that's what it says. He's living with this family that they messed up. They're a messed up family. I don't want to ruin anything for you, but girls go missing. Their family's hungry. That's all I'll give you. Michael is part of their family. There is just so much relatable stuff. I know it's a little over the top, but I almost don't want to tell you anything about this book because I'm excited for you to try to read it. It's not like disturbing the whole way through. Not like how I described Cows, right? But this is like realistic enough for me, relatable to all the things that I know people have gone through, and it's not too far out of the realm of like reality. Just all of the ways people are treating each other in this, and the way he's brainwashed, and all this stuff is just, you gotta read, brother. One of the best horror books I ever read. And I don't even think it's marketed as like horror. It's just like, it's a novel of terror. Yeah, so I guess it's marketed as horror. But Brother, I'll read you the back. Deep in the heart of Appalachia stands a crooked farmhouse, miles from any road. The Morrows keep to themselves, and it's served them well so far. When girls go missing off the side of the highway, the cops don't knock on their door, which is a good thing, seeing as to what's buried in the Morrows' backyard. But 19-year-old Michael Morrow isn't like the rest of his family. He doesn't take pleasure in the screams that echo through the trees. Michael pines for normalcy, and he's sure that someday he'll see the world beyond West Virginia. When he meets Alice, a pretty girl working at the record shop in the small nearby town of Dahlia, he's immediately smitten. For a moment, he nearly forgets about the monster he's become, but his brother Rebel is all too eager to remind Michael of his place. His brother Rebel, the father, the mother, the sister, all of them. This book's crazy. You should read it. It's a masterpiece. I don't care who says what about it. That one is like a top 10 of all time book for me. Keel and Patrick Burke. This follows like 4 different stories that are all kind of tied into one, but think of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre level of stuff. And this like the survivor story also, the return to the place, just the whole thing. It's like a classic almost. This thing's crazy, and it's dark, and it's messed up, and it's got this like, it's Alabama heat. Like the main character, she's escaping from there, barely gets away from them. It's just, go look up Kin. Just go look it up, because this one was really messed up as well, and it just like has some scenes in it that are dark, just all the way through, and very high quality writing too. Like there's so much going on in here. It's just like a genius wrote this, a smart person, a great author put together, just a really great story. Like one of the characters in here is a soldier with PTSD who returns from Iraq to find out his brother is missing. And his brother's among the murdered. Okay, it's just continue and continue and continue. It's just great. It keeps going. It keeps getting better, and it manages to weave in a bunch of different perspectives and people into how this one messed up family can just affect so many people and how trauma spreads, right? And it just is contagious almost. Anyway, Kin was messed up. You need a good stomach for this one too, because there's some scenes that are just like just dark, messed up stuff. And then this I'd say is fun. It's a little disturbing, but it's still fun. Sergio Gomez, Camp Slaughter. There's a sequel out now. I'm probably gonna get it and read it. But this is about a slasher. It's like a slasher film in a book, but really done very well. And it's about this psycho cannibal dude out in the woods taking one college kid out by another, just capturing one of them and doing all kinds of like messed up stuff. He eats people. He's deranged Camp Slaughter. Okay, it's very fun, easy read. It's a blast, even though it's really messed up and you still will feel upset, and there's just all kinds of like violence and things. But yeah, I like this author. I'm gonna read his next book. It's a sequel of this. So I think the main guy's name is Ignacio. Yeah, I'm pretty sure his name's Ignacio. The guy. So go read it. Even the first chapter. If you read just the first chapter, it's fun. All right, the preamble or whatever, the first chapter. Perfect slasher movie. Like a modern approach to it. Really enjoyed Camp Slaughter. That's my 8 stack of books here. I'll show you them. It's my 8 stack of books. And then the 2 that I don't have because they were so messed up, I actually got rid of them. All right. Thanks, guys, for watching. If you have any experience with books that you had to just, even if they're not in this genre, books that you just had to put down after you read them and just breathe, let me know in the comments because I'm interested in that. All right. Peace.